Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/EntitledPeople for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions at the end, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Posted by that guy 081. A true tale of office supply tyranny. I've been working at this marketing firm for about 3 years now, and for the most part, my colleagues are great. Except for Diane. Diane sits 3 cubicles down from me, and has worked here for 15 years. She constantly reminds everyone of her seniority and acts like it entitles her to special treatment. But what's been driving me absolutely insane lately is her bizarre obsession with office supplies. Last Tuesday, I needed a stapler for an important client presentation. Mine had mysteriously disappeared from my desk the week before. Already suspicious. So I walked over to the supply cabinet. Empty. Not a single stapler in sight, even though we just had a supply delivery the previous day. I asked around, and Madison from accounting mentioned she'd seen Diane carrying a box to her car during lunch. Curious, I casually strolled by Diane's cubicle later that afternoon, and what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Behind her desk, partially hidden by a filing cabinet, was a mountain of office supplies. I'm talking at least 6 staplers, dozens of notebooks, countless pens, and even 3 of the new wireless mice that IT had been saying were backordered when I requested one last month. The next morning, I discreetly mentioned to our office manager, Jen, that I couldn't find any staplers. She sighed deeply and said, "Let me guess, you need other office supplies too." When I nodded, she lowered her voice and said, "This happens every quarter. Diane takes everything and claims she needs backups for her important projects. I've ordered replacements, but they won't arrive until next week." Yesterday, things finally came to a head. I was printing materials for a client meeting when the printer displays toner low. I went to grab a replacement cartridge, but of course, there were none. My meeting was in 30 minutes. Desperate, I walked to Diane's cubicle and politely asked if she might have an extra toner cartridge. She looked at me like I'd asked for her firstborn child. "Why would I have printer toner at my desk? That's ridiculous!" she snapped. Just then, her phone rang. As she turned to answer it, her chair bumped into a tote bag under her desk, and I clearly saw 3 toner cartridges inside. I was fuming, but kept my cool. After her call, I simply said, "Diane, I can see the toner cartridges in your bag. The entire office needs supplies to do their jobs, not just you." Her face turned bright red. "I've been here for 15 years. I need these supplies for my special projects. You newcomers don't understand how things work around here." By this point, several colleagues had stopped to watch the commotion. Jen from office management appeared, took one look at Diane's hoard, and said firmly, "Diane, we've talked about this. Please return the supplies to the cabinet immediately." Diane huffed dramatically, muttering about ungrateful coworkers, no respect for seniority, as she reluctantly handed over 1 toner cartridge. Later that afternoon, an email went out from HR about a new supply checkout system being implemented, effective immediately. I also noticed the janitor installing a lock on the supply cabinet. The best part? This morning, I arrived to find Diane's cubicle completely empty, with a small note from our manager saying she'd be working from home indefinitely. The supply cabinet is now fully stocked, and mysteriously, everyone's missing items have reappeared. Some people's entitlement truly knows no bounds. I think Diane's also just a kleptomaniac, honestly, because, seriously. She just goes around stealing things off of people's desks and hoarding them for herself. That feels like a mix between hoarding and, kleptomania. But on top of that, there's also a nice mix of entitlement, as if she's entitled to just steal people's shit without any kind of repercussions because of her seniority. Or at least the more likely outcome, in my opinion, is that she's using her seniority to excuse or explain her actions of needing to hoard the office supplies that she is. I actually think converting her to a work-from-home employee was probably one of the best choices they could have made. Because if she actually did good work but has the problem of, stealing office supplies, and it's kind of like she makes more money than we lose by having to buy new office supplies, but now she's actively inconveniencing other employees. So, let's just make her buy her own supplies, or inconvenience her quite a bit and make it harder for her to actually take office supplies home. Seriously, this shit. I will tell you how this deal works. One early spring, I decided to sell our travel trailer. It was only a few years old, looked new inside and out, priced right, and it was prime time of year to sell. I knew it would be gone after a showing or two. The first family shows up, after an odd phone call. The wife does all the talking, but made it clear that her husband, Glenn, makes the decisions in the family. She asks a ton of questions on the phone, so she could give the info to Glenn. Glenn is in the room with her as this is going on. Weird, but whatever. They roll in and I meet Glenn. He tries to avoid eye contact and is trying to play a power game. The wife and kids are in love with the camper, polite and friendly. Glenn is a dick. As I answer his questions, he occasionally smirks. At this point, I'm not interested in selling him dog shit fresh from my backyard, but I'm not lowering myself to his behavior. I give him the respect he does not deserve, taking the high road, since his poor wife and kids don't need to see me telling him to get the fuck out. Eventually, Glenn says, I'm going to be giving you X amount of dollars. We'll be back next weekend with the check. He barks at his wife and kids to get back in the car. I tell him that I did not agree to any price. Maybe it will still be around next weekend. Maybe not. He smirks again and drives away. Glenn's price was exactly what I would have accepted from any potential buyer who is not a dick. At that point, I was clear about one thing. Glenn will never end up with my camper because, well, you know. The next day, a couple shows up to look at the trailer. They're slack-jawed at the price and condition and ask what I'll take for it, as they can meet me later in the day with cash. I offer to sell them for Glenn's price. A few hours later, I have a fat stack of $100 bills in hand, and they leave with the trailer, thrilled with the deal. The next Friday, just as I expected, Glenn's abused wife calls. She tells me that they got a loan and want to pick up the trailer tomorrow. I play dumb and ask what she means. After she explains it again, I drop a bomb. I'm so sorry, but it's gone. I tell her all Glenn had to do was respectfully offer the amount he told me I would be taking. Then leave a deposit check, and you would be picking up your camper tomorrow. I reminded her that she was standing there when I told Glenn that we had not agreed to a price, and it was still very much for sale to whomever wanted it. Finally, I told her to make sure that Glenn knows that it's sold for his price the next day. So sad. Seems that Glenn was a dick who got the dick on this one. Part of me kind of gets the impression that Glenn works in some sort of sales position, potentially a used car salesman, because his attitude just screams that. He thinks he knows how to make a good deal, he thinks he knows what he can do to push people around, and he thinks he can get away with it. I definitely do feel bad for Glenn's wife and kids, because they're definitely just kind of a victim of his general stupidity and arrogance and entitlement, because the thing is, if Glenn had just been kind about it and nice about it, yeah, they would have had their nice little summer camper trailer thing, and OP probably would have been more amicable to actually accepting the deal. But because he was a bastard and treated OP and his wife with little to no fucking respect, it just bit him in the ass, and I hope he learns from that. Unfortunately, though, my guess would be is that because of the family dynamic that we're presented with, that OP's wife will not tell Glenn what happened. She'll probably create some kind of excuse or something along those lines, and she'll get blamed for letting the deal fall through because she doesn't have the courage to actually tell Glenn what's going on. This is definitely a lot of assuming on my end, but that's the vibe I get from this kind of dynamic, with her doing all the talking and Glenn making the final decision. If the deal falls through, Mr. Car Salesman Glenn, which that is assumption on my end, doesn't have to have it on his ego mark that he let the deal collapse. It's his wife's fault that the deal fell through, not his. That's just kind of my tinfoil hat theory, though. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Hot probs. Entitled Boss. I was traveling with my boss to a conference held at a hotel in Las Vegas. Before the first meeting of the day, we stopped at a little cafe in the hotel complex for breakfast. I had a bagel, she had a croissant and a fruit salad. She only ate about half of the fruit salad and said she didn't want to waste the rest of it. So she was going to the counter of the cafe to ask them to write her name on it and put it in the fridge for her to pick up later. I said, "My room has a little fridge. Doesn't yours? If not, I can keep it in my fridge for you." She said, "Nah, I don't feel like going all the way back up to my room. I'll just have them save it for me." I argued that food safety laws don't allow them to take back food once it's served. But she told me that doesn't apply to situations like this. And like I said, I'm going to have them write my name on the container. The teenager counter girl told her what I said, that she couldn't take the food back for liability purposes. My boss insisted on speaking to the manager, who was busy at the moment. My boss raised her voice and said, "Go get him now! We're going to be late for our meeting!" I saw the wheels turning in the counter person's head. I'll just say okay and throw the fruit salad away. I'm not going to be on shift here when she comes back later this afternoon. The girl smiled and said, "Okay, sure, what can it hurt?" and carefully wrote my boss's name on the lid in black marker. Boss sauntered away victoriously and said to me, "See? People are happy to do things if you just ask. You're so timid. This is why you aren't more successful." We met up for dinner later and I asked, "Did you remember to pick up your fruit salad?" She did, but it was all different people working then, and they didn't know what she was talking about, and her fruit salad had been thrown away. I said, "Oh, that's too bad. The manager probably made them toss it out. Sorry, I know you wanted to eat the rest of it." She replied, "Oh, it's okay. I made them make me a whole new one for free since they threw mine away." That boss once gave me a copy of The Fountainhead because she thought it would help me. She also quit that job by leaving for lunch one day and never coming back. She made her husband call the company weeks later and confirm she had quit, after all their attempts to reach her were unsuccessful. She had worked there for 10 years. It always sucks getting a story like this when someone just gets away with being extremely entitled. Like, my guess would be is this cafe probably realized the time it would take to defuse the situation was far more than just simply giving her a new salad. But the problem is this kind of shit just encourages this kind of future behavior, because now she realizes, oh, I can just do this every single time and pretty much always get exactly what I want. Then on top of that, she goes around and telling people who have the inkling to potentially be entitled, yeah, you can always just cause a scene and they'll pretty much give you exactly what you want. And then that behavior begins to spread through person to person. It's just, ugh. Like, I understand why people do just give in to entitled people because of how easy it is to get them to shoo away and just be done with it. But it causes more problems down the line and just makes things more difficult for more people. His story, Client updates his iPad despite our warnings, blames us when things don't work out. This was like 10 or so years ago, but I was reminded of it today. I used to work for a company that produced a software suite for pharmacies. We had software both for tracking medications, etc., as well as for point of sale. There was also an app used for deliveries. It ran on iPads, and I was one of the main people supporting this developer app. One day, Apple pushed out an update for iOS. I'm not a developer, so I don't know the reason, but it turned out the update broke something in the delivery app. If you updated your iPad to the newest version, the app absolutely would not function. Our developers found out that same morning, patched it, and submitted the patch for approval on the App Store. We also sent out a message to all stores through email and on our software's announcement banner to not update their iPads, explaining why. We received a few calls about the issue, some asking for clarification, others having updated it before seeing the banner. We helped where we could, and most were very understanding. Not Jim. Jim, not his real name, was a pharmacist and pharmacy owner. He was well known at our company for being rude, entitled, and aggressive. He had a tendency to make demands and expected us to bend over backwards to accommodate anything he wanted. It was much of a surprise when he called in saying his iPads weren't working. I explained to him what had happened with the iOS update and that we had submitted a fix, but that it might take a day or two before Apple approved the update and made it available. I also asked if he'd seen the warnings not to update. It turns out he had seen the warnings, but told me he wanted the newest and best at all times. So he updated anyway, ignoring our warnings. He said that we were going to fix his iPads right this second, and that he would not be waiting for the update. I spent well over an hour trying to get the app working again, but I had known from the beginning that there wasn't anything I could do. He just hurled abuse and got angrier and angrier. Finally, my manager told me to make it clear that we'd warned them, and he would just have to wait until Apple made our update available. I kid you not, he demanded I call Apple and tell them he needed the update right now. He wanted me, a low-level dude for a small software company, to call Apple, one of the largest corporations in the world, and demand They push out the update specifically for him. Yeah, no. I gave him the Apple support line number and told him to go do it. He said he would, and angrily hung up. I heard he called in a couple more times that day and talked to a couple of other techs, but at that point, they'd been directed not to help him with this issue. When I used to work in app and software development, it was ungodly common to run into clients who would just actively believe that, oh, this warning doesn't apply to me. It'll only apply to other people, but my iPad will be able to handle it just fine. So I can just ignore this and everything will be okay. And they go through and they do the update, and sure as hell, now I have to walk them through doing an OS rollback, assuming they were fortunate enough to even have the kind of backup in place for that. And on a secondary kind of tech-related note, this is actually one of the big reasons why Apple's closed ecosystem can kind of get under a lot of developer skins, because waiting for Apple to approve the actual update process can take fucking forever. And if it's like a day zero critical update that has to go out, that update process and approval process is agonizingly long, and it is stressful. And you have to wait for Apple because they have a closed ecosystem. Every application has to go through their App Store. So one of the biggest arguments is the App Store should be like the foundation point, but if people need to get access to new updates or new applications that haven't gone through the App Store, they should be able to download that on their own without going through that approval process. Now, I am grotesquely simplifying things here because this is not the information you're here for, and I'm sure someone can correct me or add additional information in the comments. But Apple's biggest reason for not doing this is, for one, they gotta lock off their devices and get full control over what goes on there. And two, they claim, which there is merit to this claim, that it helps keep their users secure and safe from any bad or malicious actors. Just as a general heads up, if you ever see some kind of warning or banner in an application telling you not to do something because the application may break, always treat the may as a will, because you never want to risk it and roll the dice. Mr. Coco 1234. My coworker's mom called me at work because her sweet boy had to stay late. Note, English is not my first language. So this happened last week, but I still think about it sometimes and feel both secondhand rage and pity. A new guy joined my team at the start of last month who we'll call Sam. Sam is a quiet guy, early 30s, and polite to a fault, always looking over his shoulder like he's about to get in trouble. At first, I thought he was just shy, but within a week, I figured something was off. He'd get these phone calls every 30 minutes, like clockwork. Eventually, I asked him if everything was okay. That's when he admitted it was his mother. She needed to know what he was doing at all times. Like, literally, where are you sitting? What are you eating? Who are you talking to? Type updates. He said he was raised that way and just never broke the habit. I could see him shrink into himself every time she called, like the life got sucked out of him in real time. Anyway, it was the month end, and we had to stay back late to wrap up some department reporting. Everyone stayed a couple extra hours. It was quiet. We were all working, and suddenly, Sam's phone rings again. He steps outside. 2 minutes later, he comes back inside looking white as a sheet and says, "Hey, Mr. Coco? My mom wants to speak with you." I thought he was joking. He was not. He looked like he was about to cry. I took the call out of sheer disbelief, and oh boy, I wish I hadn't. This woman unleashed on me. "How dare you make my son work past office hours? He needs to come home and rest. You don't know what he's been through. Don't you know how dangerous the roads are?" I was too stunned to even respond properly. I just said, "Ma'am, I think Sam can explain the situation better," and handed the phone back. And that's when something amazing happened. Sam finally snapped. He didn't yell, but his voice was steady. "I need this job, Mom. You can't keep doing this. I'm staying late because that's my responsibility, and everyone is here too. Please just stop." It was quiet for a second, and then he just ended the call. Honestly, I was proud of him. I know how hard it is to stand up to your parents, especially when they try to control your whole life. He wrapped up an hour later. I offered to take him out for a cold drink just to decompress, and he looked like someone who had finally removed a 20-year-old weight off of his chest. But when I dropped him off near his house, he gave a small, awkward smile and just said, "Thanks. tonight's going to be rough. I haven't heard his mom's voice since then, but he still gets those calls, just less frequently now. I really hope he makes it out okay. Some cages don't even have bars. You just carry them in your head. Edit, thank you all for the wonderful comments. Just a quick update. It's been baby steps over the past couple of days. He does occasionally shrink still, but I can feel that after the first time he snapped back at his mom, something has shifted in him. I think he realized the world didn't end, and he seems to be a little more confident. I hope this journey continues. Some cages don't even have bars. You just carry them in your head. What a great line to put in there. Hopefully Sam is able to continue to break the trend of his mother essentially being an overzealous helicopter mom for his entire life, because that is definitely not a fun and pretty abusive situation to find yourself in, where Sam is kind of, at least he was, just an extension of his mother. He wasn't actually a person until he stood up to his mother, and while it's going to be a difficult and honestly slow path for him to take, I'm delighted to hear that he's taking those first steps to break out of the control of his mother, because that's not easy to do. And good on OP for being supportive of Sam during this process, because he's definitely going to need it. Annie HK95. My, female 30, friend's stepmom and stepbrother tried to get my daughter deported so I would date him. I originally posted about this a while back, but my original post was more a lengthy rant, and I was a little too emotional at the time. Plus, the original title was misleading, as I meant to say stepmother and not mother. That said, this time, I'm going to try again to better articulate myself, so here's the full story. For those who read my first post, this will also serve as the update, and sorry in advance for being long. Also, trigger warning, as there is violence mentioned in this story. I, female 30, am a single mom to a mixed-raced 3-year-old daughter. I'm white, but my daughter's father is New Zealand Maori, the indigenous people of New Zealand. I have a close friend from college who I will call Kate, who really is a cool and genuinely nice person, but her stepmom Pam and stepbrother Kyle are toxic, entitled people. Pam is unemployed, used to work at an Amazon warehouse, but is now living on disability. Kate's dad, who I will call Kenny, works as a truck driver, and Kyle is also unemployed. As to my understanding, he's never been able to hold a job for long. Also, while Kate and her family are originally from West Virginia, they moved to Pennsylvania about some time ago. On July last year, I held an engagement party for my friend Kate and her fiancé Jack at my family's vacation home in the Catskills, as they were supposed to get married in December last year. Up until then, I didn't really talk to Kate's stepmom or stepbrother. I don't know them, but apparently they've been following me, my family, and friends on Instagram and Facebook. According to Kate, Pam is apparently envious of the photos and stories we, me and our friends, post of us traveling, going out to restaurants, photos of us at parties or networking events, going on family boating trips, etc. For this reason, Pam was demanding that she and her son be invited to the engagement party so she could socialize with our friends, my family, as well as colleagues from the museum and university, as Pam and Kyle had no social life or friends of their own. Kate and I relented and allowed them to come, as we didn't want them hassling Kate about this later on. Also, a little more background about Kyle. Kate did also go on to talk about how Pam pretty much coddled Kyle, that he was homeschooled sometime during grade school, as Pam didn't like the fact the school disciplined him for bullying and other antisocial behavior. That Pam got mad at the school when they raised concerns that Kyle may have mental health issues and sexist beliefs. That he was never told off by Pam, but rather enabled by her. And Pam wouldn't let Kenny discipline Kyle for anything he did, but apparently Pam could discipline Kate for the most minor infractions. That said, Kyle grew up coming to expect to be given anything and everything he wants, as well as never having had to face any real consequences for his actions. For this reason, Kyle has no real friends, has no social skills, and no respect for personal boundaries. At the party, as mentioned in my previous post, Kyle and Pam seemed out of place. Pam kept trying to talk up Kyle to my female friends at the party. Kyle just seemed awkward or uncomfortable the whole time, and they couldn't hold conversations with the other guests. Later, Kyle started flirting with me. I initially tried to be polite, keeping my answers to his questions short, but after Kyle called my daughter a half-breed, saying that I should get rid of her so I could go out with him, I felt so disgusted and angry with him that I snapped, shouting at him and his mom to get out of my family's house. Pam got mad at me, accused me of disrespecting her son, which I don't deny, demanding I apologize to her son. Pam screamed at the other guests who are now also chastising them, Pam and Kyle, etc. I in turn called Pam and Kyle out for being racist, classist, misogynists, with the two of them leaving after realizing that nobody was supporting them, and Rachel calling being on the phone with the sheriff's office. I can only assume that Rachel is a friend. My guess being is that this information got lost in translation between the two posts. Pam and Kyle then started sending me and Kate messages, angrily expressing how they felt humiliated. Pam calling me and my guests, most of whom were friends and colleagues from the museum and university, were snobs, as she felt we thought we were too good for them. Pam demanding I apologize to them, Pam and Kyle demanding I go out on a date with Kyle to give him a chance, and other things. I ended up just blocking Pam, but neglected to also block Kyle. Fast forward to late March. ICE came over to our family's home in the Upper East Side, since apparently Pam and Kyle reported my daughter as an illegal immigrant, despite my daughter being a US citizen, born in Boston, and me being her mother. I then called my grandpa's law firm, who sent over a couple of lawyers. The lawyers dealt with the ICE agents while I showed documents, etc. Anyway, Kate told me that Pam and Kyle tried to get my daughter deported because they didn't want a non-white person in their family. Pam wanted me to get with her son, and they hoped that this would somehow make me willing to go with Kyle. Instead, my family and I decided we were going to take them to court. Our lawyers reported Pam and Kyle to the Inspector General's office for their fraudulent report. Note, from what I understood, by filing a fraudulent report to ICE, what Pam and Kyle did would be a federal offense under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. But as to whether DHS pursues them is up to them. If DHS investigates Pam and Kyle, that would be separate from our family's case against them. Kate and her fiancé Jack did initially plan to go no contact with Pam and Kyle, but that proved to be impossible as Kate and her dad are trying to mend their relationship. Kenny was away from home a lot due to being on the road, and even when he was at home, he didn't want to get involved with what he called family drama, and just told Kate to do whatever Pam demanded of her in order to keep the peace in their family. This did cause a long strain in her relationship with her dad, but he's genuinely trying to mend his relationship with Kate, trying to set boundaries with Pam, but that said, it would be nearly impossible for Kate to go no contact with Pam or Kyle, without also going no contact with her father. I understood Kate's situation and accepted her decision to only remain low contact with Pam and Kyle, as Kate did also promise to not only not mention anything about me to Pam or Kyle, but also keep me informed on anything they might be doing. A few days after ICE's visit, Kyle contacted me again, this time from a different number, angry that my daughter wasn't deported, demanding I put her up for adoption or give her to her birth father, my ex, reiterating that they don't want a mixed kid in their family, and that he wanted my daughter out of the picture before we could get together. Feeling too tired to deal with it, I just told Kyle that any communication between us and him or his mother would need to be done via our lawyers going forward, before hanging up on him. From different numbers, Pam and Kyle then tried calling me multiple times again, leaving voice messages which frankly sound unhinged and incoherent, but boiled down to them demanding I talk to them. Pam saying I'm not being a good daughter-in-law. In other words to that effect. Kate then contacted me, warning me that Pam and Kyle are freaking out. Pam ranting that she can't afford to be taken to court again as she's living on welfare. Kyle is unemployed, Kyle being obsessed with me, and Pam wanting me to give her son the perfect wife, who would take care of them. Additionally, Kenny is frustrated and angry with Pam and Kyle's shenanigans, with Kenny telling them to just drop it and to leave me alone, but they're not listening to him. Our lawyers have been in contact with Pam's lawyer, Rob, who is also Pam's older brother, with Rob wanting to negotiate a settlement before things go to court. Because of this, our lawyers organized a meeting at my grandparents' LIC office. At the meeting, me, my dad, and the two lawyers assigned to me met with Rob, Pam, and Kyle. To his credit, Rob was courteous, professional, and does seem like a genuinely reasonable person. However, as our lawyers started discussing the settlement, Pam interjected, demanding that I drop the lawsuit, saying things along the lines of, "You're going to be my son's wife, so you better start acting like it." Her saying that I should be grateful that her son is into me, as not many guys are going for single moms like you. Keep in mind, Pam herself was a single mom before she married Kate's dad. Pam saying her son and I will give her a grandchild who is, as she says, looks like us, and your immigrant daughter, Pam referring to my daughter, is not like us. With Pam then turning to my dad and saying, "Our family should be one," and "We're like you." Rob sat there uncomfortably, clearly embarrassed and ashamed of his sister's behavior as he tried to get Pam to shut up. My dad then told them that we are nothing alike. We do not share their views. We do not share the same values. My daughter is his, my dad's, granddaughter, and that we have nothing in common with them. My lawyer then reminded them that the point of this meeting was to discuss a settlement, and that they're not exactly in any position to make demands. Pam, ignoring this, went on her rant, saying it was unfair, that she spent the better half of her life working minimum wage jobs before going on disability, while my family wastes nice things, like our family Christmas parties, boat trips, vacations, and good schools on my immigrant daughter, as Pam called my child. Pam continued talking about how she and Kyle deserve these things more than my daughter does. Pam saying it's unfair that my family and I flaunt lives on social media, but not invite Pam or her son to join us, despite us inviting Kate, who again is a close friend of mine, and that her kind of people, referring to my daughter again, have no place in her idea of America. Ew. Our lawyers then just asked Pam and Kyle, "If you're not here to discuss a settlement, then what exactly are you hoping to gain from this meeting?" Kyle then spoke up, saying that he demanded that my family drop our lawsuit and that I give in to his demand to give my daughter away and agree to go out with him. In exchange, he says that he will allow me to keep on working, but that my money needs to go to him as he will control our finances. With Kyle saying, "I'm going to be the man of the house, so you better start listening to what I tell you." I just replied saying, "What house? You live in an apartment with your mom." Kyle then got up and tried to walk towards me, but Rob had to hold him back as my dad and one of my lawyers got between me and Kyle. My other lawyer then left the conference room to call for security as Pam started screaming and shouting her own lawyer/brother Rob for trying to hold back Kyle. A couple minutes later, security arrived and tried to escort Pam and Kyle out of the office. However, as they were doing this, Kyle then broke free and tried running back towards the conference room we were in, but was being held back by office staff. Kyle then got into a fist fight with the two security guards and some of the office staff who tried to restrain him, with Kyle finding himself in a corner with his fists up, his face red, and incoherently screaming at the security and staff surrounding him. Seeing this, I instructed the office receptionist to call 911. Seeing that the receptionist was on the phone, Pam then tried grabbing the phone from her as I held Pam back, with Pam shouting racist slurs at the receptionist. Realizing that the cops were on their way, Pam then grabbed Kyle as they ran towards the elevator, fleeing the building before the cops arrived. After they left and the police arrived, we gave our statements to the police. The injured security and office staff indicated that they wanted to press charges against Pam and Kyle. We then spoke with Rob, who did apologize to us for their actions, with him going on to say that he only agreed to take their case because they're family. We also moved to file a restraining order against Pam and Kyle with all communication between to be done via our lawyers. Additionally, as a result of Kyle assaulting security and staff in my grandpa's firm, they decided to pursue their own case against Kyle and Pam as well. Even after the incident at the office, Kyle and Pam continued to send me and my dad messages from different phone numbers and fake Facebook accounts, with Pam accusing me of ruining their future, again demanding we drop the lawsuit, demanding that we somehow get the police off of Kyle's back. Pam accusing me of ruining Kyle's life, accusing my family of being selfish, Kyle threatening to put me in my place, etc. As per our lawyer's advice, we did not respond to their messages or engage with them, but rather just record them and forwarded it to our lawyers for documentation. In order to decompress from the stress caused by Pam and Kyle, I got some time off work and spent a week down in Mexico to just relax a little. After returning to the States, I held a dinner get-together with my friends at this restaurant in Park Avenue where Kate again apologized for all the trouble her stepmom and stepbrother had been putting me through. as I assured her that I don't blame her for any of this. Kate also let me know that she, her dad, and Rob have been urging Pam to just agree to a settlement as they can't afford a lengthier court battle, coupled with all the other debts and bills Pam and Kyle already have, and Kenny has been pretty much paying for all their legal bills, draining his savings. Last week, my lawyers met with Pam and Kyle's lawyer Rob again, who informed us that Pam and her husband/Kate's dad, Kenny, decided to just pay a settlement in order to end this case. Evidently, in addition to my case against Pam and Kyle, they're still dealing with the still separate lawsuit from my grandpa's firm. Kyle has decided to go into hiding as he knows we reported him to the police for what he did in the office. Pam and Kyle have other debts they haven't been paying, and Pam is now even more miserable than before. Because of this, Kenny decided he'd use the remainder of his savings to pay me a settlement, as they need to use whatever other loans and remaining family savings they still have to pay their other debts and Pam's other legal bills. Kate has also repeatedly refused to help her stepmom or stepbrother, as she and her fiancé Jack have their own life, their own bills to pay, and are saving not only for their wedding later this year, but also to move to Chicago by sometime next year. Also, just a side note, Kate and Jack were supposed to get married on December last year, but due to Jack's injury and their subsequent medical bills, it was postponed until September this year. I figured that despite my reservations on how truthful this story is, I figured this could be a really fun one to narrate and read through. It's definitely a fun story. Now, whether this is entirely true, an embellishment on OP's part, or entirely fabricated, that's up to you. Because, in the end, people this fucking crazy do exist, and out of a world of almost 8 billion people, if not more, there is a chance that something like this could happen, with how just massive the world is. Kyle and Pam would certainly be getting the crown for the most entitled people to appear thus far. But in general, what causes someone to have this kind of delusion in their life? Not just one person either, but two. Two people who actively feed into each other's delusions. Like, what could cause this? Assuming this story is 100% truthful, what could cause this? Because for me personally, I'm in the boat of there's a good chance that a good amount of this happened, but there might be some embellishments along the way. Like, I could definitely see someone getting in their head like, oh, well, if we take the child out of the picture, they're more likely to end up with me. That's what's stopping us from dating right now. It has to be. Like, I could see that leap of logic being made by someone who is just completely out of it. But the way this escalates, it definitely just seems to be a lot. I'm sorry, I don't have much commentary to really give on this one because this was a lot to record, but I'd be very curious to hear what your guys' general insight would be on this story and how you feel about it. Oh, and as a final little note here for OP, if this story is in fact factual, don't go to Kate's wedding if Pam and Kyle are going to be there. You should probably skip on that. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.